short time ago in Corpus Christi to get updates on rescue and recovery efforts from the massive flooding. You should be seeing some live pictures right now on your screen. This is the room in Corpus Christi, Texas, where we expect the president and Governor Abbott in Texas to receive an update on those relief efforts. You can see in the room right there, Congressman Farenthold is in that room. Just a few moments ago, we were seeing some pictures of Senator Ted Cruz. So you see a number of lawmakers from the Texas delegation in the room on hand from this meeting with the president and the First Lady. She's also on the ground as well. We saw them getting off of Air Force One just in the last several minutes. This is obviously a very big test, big moment for President Trump. There was some questioning whether this was the right moment for President Trump to be visiting a disaster area so soon after Hurricane Harvey came ashore. I can tell you, though, from talking to sources that the president feels that this is the right thing to do. He did this during the campaign, visited Louisiana after some flooding down there. And the feeling is inside the White House, and we heard this from Sarah Huckabee Sanders just a short while ago. She was talking to reporters on Air Force One. The feeling is that they're far enough away from where the critical response areas are right now. Obviously, that is in the Houston area, around the Houston area, and heading into Louisiana. And what we understand from talking to folks over at the White House is that the president may indeed visit those parts of Texas and Louisiana over the weekend. Not set in stone yet, but we're going to be watching that. You can see Senator John Cornyn is also sitting down in the room there, just a few folks away from Senator Ted Cruz, so it appears that they are getting ready for the president's visit there. But first, let's take a look at the Houston area. Large parts of the country's fourth biggest city are underwater after being drenched with more than 3 feet of water, with more on the way. And right now, an ominous order from officials in Columbia Lake, that is just southwest of Houston. Get out now. That is, you can see that on screen there. Get out now is what they're telling people in Columbia Lakes. The levees there have breached, and residents are being told to leave immediately. So if you live in that area, or if you know people in that area of Columbia Lakes, please make sure that those folks get out now. That is what you're being told by government officials. Let's also not forget about Louisiana, with today being the 12th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Parts of that state are also dealing with devastating floods. More than 500 people, and you can see some of that video there, they had to be rescued from their homes in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Let's move northeast up through Texas to the Houston area. The city and surrounding suburbs are dealing with record levels of rain, as many as 4 feet, according to one report. That's a staggering amount, and more is on the way as Harvey continues to churn out in the Gulf. Our Brian Todd is there in Houston right now, Ed Lavandera in Galveston Island, and CNN meteorologist Pedram Javahari is at our Severe Weather Center in Atlanta. Brian, as we're looking at these live pictures in Corpus Christi, Texas, where the president is expected to arrive at any moment, I only preface that in case we have to jump in as you're speaking, Brian. You have seen so many of these rescues over the last several days, just some heroic efforts, thousands of them so far. What can you tell us about what's happening right now? Brian Todd, can you hear me, sir? This is Jim Acosta. We are in live programming right now. Brian is down in Houston trying to reach out to him. Brian Todd, can you hear me? What can you tell us?
Well, Jim, we are at Bush Intercontinental Airport. These Customs and Border Protections helicopters are shuttling now over and are about ready to take off.
And Brian, where are they off to next? Can you tell us a little bit about what's taking place, what you've seen in the last several minutes? As you can see there, he's being blown around, so it might be tough for him to hear. But Brian, what can you tell us about everything you've seen today so far?
Bush Intercontinental Airport. These are Customs and Border Protections helicopters, rescue helicopters, getting ready to take off. They're shuttling here and getting ready to take off on another wave of rescue missions.
And what have you seen so far throughout the day? How many folks have these rescuers picked up so far? How complicated is it right now in terms of the weather?
We've seen a lot of devastation from the air, Jim. When we've ridden along with these helicopters, the flooding goes on as far as the eye can see. Water up to past the windows of many houses and almost up to the roofs.
Live programming, we're going to have to cut you off. Governor Abbott, President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump just coming into the room now in Corpus Christi, Texas, to get an update on relief efforts in the state of Texas. You can see the president sitting down now with the First Lady along with Governor Abbott. They're sitting down. Let's go ahead and listen in and see what they're going to tell us.
Welcome the President of the United States to the great state of Texas. I want to express my gratitude for our fellow Texans and especially the people of Corpus Christi for giving the President such a warm welcome on his ride over here, showing the gratitude that we all have for the President. I want to express my deep gratitude to the President for him and his entire cabinet and staff for what they have done over the past couple of weeks. A lot of people see what happens in front of the camera. I want to reveal in just 1 minute what's been going on behind the scenes, behind the camera for the past 2 weeks. About 10 days in advance of the hurricane even coming in to the Corpus Christi area, members of the President's cabinet and the President himself were in contact with me and my office pre-preparing for this catastrophe that was coming our way. At every step of the way as the hurricane came across the shore, as the flooding began in Houston, Texas, the President and his cabinet remain in constant contact with me and my staff, and they all had one thing to say: Texas, what do you need? How can we help? You can count on us. What I've learned is we can count on the President of the United States and his staff for helping Texas. Texas has been tested, but our response to this challenge has been made much more effective because of the very effective way the President and his staff has helped Texas respond to this challenge. So, Mr. President, thank you. Welcome to Texas.
I appreciate it. It's so nice, Governor, and it's really my honor. This is a very special place of a special state, and Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn, thank you very much, Senator Cornyn, for being here. We appreciate it. I know it's hard to get here for both of you. You were trapped in various locations, but we appreciate you both being here. I want to thank my staff, my cabinet. We have quite a few of our cabinet here. You know, Ben Carson, obviously, from HUD, and Tom Price and Linda McMahon, small business, which is now big business, because you're going to be, when you add them all up, you're going to be helping a lot of the people in Texas and doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Linda. But we have had a tremendous group of folks. Our acting director, Elaine, thank you very much for the job you've done, and a man who's really become very famous on television over the last couple of days, Mr. Long. We appreciate it very much. You have been just outstanding. And I can tell you that my folks just telling me how great your representatives have been in working together. It's a real team, and we want to do it better than ever before. We want to be looked at in 5 years and 10 years from now as this is the way to do it. This was of epic proportion. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. And I just want to say that working with the governor and his entire team has been an honor for us. So, Governor, again, thank you very much. And we won't say congratulations. We don't want to do that. We don't want to congratulate. We'll congratulate each other when it's all finished. But you have been terrific, really terrific. Great honor. And you've been my friend here for a long time. And with that, maybe you could say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the whole community is coming together. You know, right here where the brunt of the Category 4 hurricane winds came in just north of Corpus Christi, we're already starting to affect recovery. Recovery is a slow process, but rest assured that we're doing everything we can to unify our efforts down to support, you know, the local responders, the first responders that we have here. Yesterday I put eyes on the ground down in Rockport. We already have points of distribution flowing. We're working in conjunction with the Governor's National Guard, where FEMA's supplying meals and water, and the National Guard is helping to run those distribution points. That's how this system works. While all eyes are on Houston, and so are mine, we've got a long way to go. We're going to have to set up expectations of the citizens, and we're going to have to continue a unified effort down to help the state of Texas ultimately recover. So, very quickly, the objectives stay the same. The event, unfortunately, to the north of us is not over. We're still in a life-saving, life-sustaining mission. We're very aware of the issues at the convention center, but let me be clear. This is not the Superdome. The convention center, we are sustaining food. They have food. We're in security. I have an incident management team inside the city of Houston as we speak. And more people are being moved to shelters to stabilize the situation. The next thing is that we're pushing commodities. Once the water goes down, we'll continue to push not only commodities, but also help to get people registered in the system to receive assistance from all of us. Assistance doesn't just come from FEMA. It comes from many organizations who are represented here today by Secretary Price, Secretary Carson, and others. The next thing is that we're looking at power restoration. We're maintaining security. Ms. Duke, mobilize the Homeland Security surge capacity force. With that comes law enforcement to make sure that we're overcoming and anticipating any security needs that we have. And then also with Secretary Price over here, we're working with not only the governor's disaster medical teams, but we're also sending federal disaster medical teams in, not only to the convention center today, there's already some on site, but there's going to be multiple areas, not only for crisis counseling, but also to make sure that we're meeting access and functional needs. The access is a challenge to getting all the supplies in. Once the roadway systems come out, we've amassed quite the federal force to be able to support the local and state efforts. For example, the governor pulls 12,000 National Guard troops in. We're pulling units out of Fort Hood as the federal government, federal DOD forces are coming in as well. We pulled several hundred trucks and staff just from assets right here in the state of Texas, and that's how the system works. This recovery is going to be frustrating. We're going to be here with you to help you guide through it. It's going to be tough to navigate all of the programs that come available, but we're here to help. So with that, I'd like to pass it along to our friends at the Coast Guard.
Mr. President, good afternoon, sir. This is where your Coast Guard serves at its best. You've got a bias for action. We are here in the state of Texas to support the state of Texas, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the lead federal agency. Sir, we have pulled Coast Guard men and women from across the country, capabilities, helicopters, fixed-wing response, incident management specialists, and they're on deck, sir, in Texas here getting after the task at hand. I'd be remiss, sir, to not tell you that as you look. Obviously, the landfall here, phase 1 was down here. We've been out, we've seen the effects here, and our local folks here up on the County Men will speak to you more about that. Up in Houston, we are all in with the challenge there. We brought everything to the fight. The weather for the next couple of days is going to remain challenging. We'll probably see average rainfalls for the year, 50 inches, 4 weeks in. And I don't think we know what that looks like, sir. But I can tell you, the Coast Guard, Department of Homeland Security team, with the DOD forces, National Guard. I spent Sunday and Monday with the governor at different locations. We are seamlessly lashed up with the state. We are getting better at every day. It is a problem of catastrophic proportions, sir. I don't think we've done before, but I can tell you we are all in and we're aligned, and I'm very encouraged, sir, about how this thing is going to go forward, just in terms of cooperation. With this, sir, I'd just like to give Captain Tony Hahn a couple moments here. He's locally give you a perspective on the flight that's been here. Yes, sir, this president.
Good morning, Mr. President. Captain Tony Hahn, the Sector Commander here at Sector Corpus Christi, and also the Incident Commander for our Unified Command. Our Unified Command comprises over 150 federal, state, and local agencies, and we also bring industry partners in there so we can make sure we're covering all our bases and we get the report over. So I want to walk through a timeline of our activities that we've done over the course of Hurricane Harvey, just to let you know where we're at. So on Tuesday, the storm shifted and became a hurricane. Our job is to really assess the port and see where we need to be to get assets out of it. And that's what we started doing on Wednesday. We started making preparations. We locked down facilities. We get assets, deep draft vessels out to sea so they don't damage the port conditions. Thursday, we moved to evacuating all our forces. We pushed our forces out of harm's way and our people so we can come back in after the storm to help as soon as we can. On Friday, we moved our boats and aircraft away from the storm so they could immediately respond. So now Harvey was upgraded to Category 4 hurricane. Our team is bunkered down in Robstown, Texas. We do a continuity of operations in Robstown, about 20 miles or so from here. We practiced that many times, so we're ready to do that. When Harvey made landfall, several ships that were moored in Corpus Christi broke their moorings, and mariners in distress were calling us for help. At that point, we had to wait till the parameters changed, but we sent our helicopters north, and we saved 19 mariners' lives that night. Later on Saturday morning, we began our port assessments, and the conditions weren't good for getting boats on the water, but with our overflights and among the damage, we noted a grounded drill ship at the front of the Corpus Christi channel, so that's a major challenge for us. We continued overflights and respond to search and rescue calls on Saturday, and the weather conditions wouldn't allow us to really get on the water for us to try and get the port open, but we're working on that. So Sunday, now the storm shifted to up to Houston. And so we surged all our search and rescue resources out of Alice, Texas, up to Houston. And we're helping every way we can with that effort by surging resources. We're using our fixed wing assets down here to run logistics run all over the state to make sure that the operational commanders in Houston are getting what they need. Additionally, we brought our boats up from the south so we can start our operational activities here now that the storm's gone. So Monday, we started our water operation with our partners. It's a huge emphasis for getting the port open for commerce and all the activities we do with the port. So our partners at the Army Corps of Engineers began their surveys of the channel, checking for shoaling and obstructions, and our ACE navigation team started their evaluations of marking the water with all the buoys and the channel markers, just to make sure when we open the port it's safe. So far we've found over 180 grounded vessels. Those, our major concern is that large drill ship that's at the mouth of the Corpus Christi Channel. Last night the tide came up, winds came out of the bands from the storm, and it actually raised itself and drifted over the other side of the channel. So salvaging that was a big priority for us. Additionally, we're working with the Texas General Land Office on all the pollution activities. So far, the good news is we've not seen anything negative in terms of pollution response or pollution releases. So to close, we're about 1/3 we've done with our channel surveys with the Army Corps. Once we complete the survey and salvage the grounded ship, we'll be in a good position to open the port. Right now, our biggest challenge right now is potential shoaling, and that'll require dredging operations. So we're really looking at this. And that, Mr. President,
Well, I want to tell you, and I can speak for the governor because we spoke about it. We are very proud of the Coast Guard, the job they've done, with the lives they've saved. We're very, very proud of you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President. Mr. President, about a couple thousand rescues a day rolled up with everybody else's in this economic issue in the ports. We are in with the Border Protection Agency. We're in with the facilities owners, the pilots on the waterways. The conditions right now are not amenable to getting the ports open. We recognize that's a national priority, and we will keep that and collectively get to that right answer as soon as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, at this time, before the press pulls out, there's the information that I'd like to share in regards to how citizens can get involved. So here again, it's the whole community. Neighbor helping neighbor is going to be needed in helping Texas overcome. So very quickly, if you would like to register for assistance underneath the governor's declared counties, there's 18 declared counties for individual assistance underneath the president's disaster declaration. That's disasterassistance.org. That puts in, disasterassistance.gov. I apologize. Disasterassistance.gov. That's the FEMA Individual Assistance Center system. There's also ways, if you're looking to volunteer, nvoad.org, nvoad.org. There's also within the state of Texas, onestarfoundation.org. There's also, and we'll leave it at that, or redcross.org as well. So thank you, and at this time, this concludes the press briefing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, and there you have it, the president being briefed there by federal officials on the relief efforts in Texas after Hurricane Harvey. You saw the FEMA administrator there and other officials, Coast Guard officials as well. We want to go back out to see how things are on the ground in the Houston area. Our Ed Lavanderi is live in Galveston. Ed, yesterday we saw you traveling around with the National Guard troops. So what are you seeing today? It still looks pretty bad where you are. That road behind you, you can tell, is just completely flooded.
Yeah, we're out here on Galveston Island, just off of the main thoroughfare, Broadway Avenue, that takes you through much of the eastern section of the island. And there has been so much rainfall here this morning on Galveston Island that there are a number of neighborhoods, not all of the island by any means, but there are a number of neighborhoods that are looking like this. These floodwaters rising very quickly. Spoke with a couple of people who have been trying to manage their way and get through these areas here in the last couple of hours. They say in many places the water is chest high, and that many homes here in this area are taking on water as well. So there has been so much rainfall since noon yesterday throughout this region that it just keeps coming and coming, and that's why we're seeing these floodwaters. In fact, on that main thoroughfare that takes you through a part of the island here that connects into Interstate 45 and takes you back onto the mainland, a lot of that road has been underwater. And in the Strand district, which is the entertainment district here on Galveston Island as well, we're hearing reports. I haven't been able to make it over there ourselves, but we're hearing from various people here on the island that there's a great deal of water in that area as well. So This is what we're seeing, chest-high water again here. Actually, this is really the most serious flooding we've seen so far on Galveston Island since this storm made its way from Corpus Christi and Rockport and started moving eastward toward where we are. So hopefully it's not a harbinger of things to come here in the coming hours, but the intensity of the rainfall and the relentlessness of it over the last couple of hours has really been dramatic here, as we've seen these floodwaters and a number of emergency vehicles we've seen repeatedly making their way through the streets here of Galveston Island this morning. So we'll continue to monitor the situation here, Jim, and see how it develops.
All right, Ed Lavandera, it looks bad where you are, and the rain is still coming. We appreciate it very much. The scope of the disaster in Houston is slowly coming into focus. Some 6,000 rescues have been performed already, with thousands more still waiting for help. Some shelters are now overflowing, and there are shortages of food and fuel. CNN's Scott McLean is in Houston, where fresh evacuations are underway. Scott, you're also standing in some water there. You've been out with the so-called Cajun Navy. Out rescuing folks. What can you tell us where you are?
Hey, Jim. So, yeah, there's lots of folks here associated with the Cajun Navy, which is really just a grassroots group of volunteers that have their own boats. And then there's some people who just came on their own hoping to help. What's interesting about this neighborhood in northeast Houston is that there's a bit of an island of dry. So on this side, you can see a lot of those houses. They're not flooded. They probably don't have water inside them. And there's not very many basements, if any, in this part of the world. The problem is, in order to get out, you got to go down here and hang a left and then walk about a mile or maybe even further than that. So you can see these folks here, they're on boats right now, but the depth changes a lot, and so you'll have some deeper spots and some shallower spots, and so it's a bit of a challenge to get out. So you might have to walk part of it if your boat bottoms out. I want to introduce you quickly here to Alden Cleveland. He's been working to try to get people out using his paddleboard. I just got to ask you, did you ever think that you'd be using this to get people out of here?
Not at all. It's much more fun at Gulf Shores, Florida, out on the Gulf in the sunshine. But they literally called for anything that'll float. So it floats. I can get people on here. I can get their stuff on here and help them get out.
Yeah. You told me earlier that you were focusing on sort of elderly people that can't walk out on their own. What have you seen as you've been out, getting people out of here?
What we're trying to do right now is I'm literally paddling door to door and asking people if any of their neighbors are immobile, in need of emergency assistance. We had some folks that were on dialysis a little bit earlier, one street over, that we managed to get out. You just saw a lady in a walker that was getting out. So right now we're focusing on anybody medical infirm, elderly folks, or little kids that just need to get out. And I provide a little bit of adventure for them. They get to ride a surfboard for the first time in their life. Not optimal conditions, but everybody's doing whatever they can do.
Yeah. And just quickly, you mentioned that there's also a mobile home park as well, maybe a mile or so back. What did you see there yesterday?
Yeah, I'll go up there. I'm going to go up there next as soon as we get this neighborhood cleared. I paddled up there yesterday. There were people on top of their roofs. There was 2 or 3 helicopter evacs going on back there. But there were some people that we just couldn't get to yet. There's a Greens Bayou runs between this neighborhood and just on the other side of that mobile home park. I'm going to go check that out right now and see if there's anybody else that can get out, because I can get back there into some of these locations that are a little more shallow than the airboats or the other boats. And then what I do is literally go door to door, come back out to the main street, Tidwell, and flag a boat down and say, I need some help. And everybody's helping. I got people from Louisiana, from Alabama. I don't know what they're calling themselves, like the Cajun Navy or something, but it's working. We're helping anybody we can.
All right, we'll keep up the good work. Thanks for chatting with us as well. And so
we need help. Get the word out.
And so, Jim, I got to tell you, a lot of people are simply just choosing not to leave. If their home is dry, or even if it has a little bit of water in it, they're saying, hey, we're going to sit tight. And one other thing that's complicating things, I just spoke to one woman who was trying to arrange to get food for one family, a large family. They don't want to leave because they're undocumented, and they're concerned that if they do, that perhaps their immigration status might be known to the authorities. So that's just one more wrinkle in an already complicated process here in Houston.
Absolutely, and it has to be complicating relief efforts as well. Scott McLean in Houston, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Days after Harvey made landfall, tireless rescue workers continue to pluck flood-ravaged Houston residents from their homes. like the gentleman we saw there a few moments ago doing that with his paddleboard. When we come back, a live report on the scene of some of the latest rescues. Thousands of rescues are happening in parts of Texas that are underwater because of Tropical Storm Harvey. South of Houston, the levee at Columbia Lakes has been breached, and residents there are being told to get out. You can see that notice on screen right there. Our Pedram Javahiri is at the Severe Weather Center in Atlanta. Pedram, what can you tell us about what we're seeing right now? This is a dire situation when you have levees being breached.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, it's a slow motion disaster, what we typically refer to it as when you see these sort of flooding events. And of course, the historic rainfall has already come down. We'll see the sunshine hopefully come back in a couple of days. But when you break down exactly what we're looking at across this region and go into Houston, a closer perspective across this region, because of course we've talked about the Buffalo Bayou, but there's Houston right there. We'll meander with the Buffalo Bayou back towards the reservoir here, about 30 miles back. We've got a couple of reservoirs and dams across this region. This is one of them. This is the Addicks. Here's the Barker across this region as well. Across this area, you put this together, they're capable of holding about 130 billion gallons of water, but they're typically bone dry as well. So there's actually baseball fields down across this. It's essentially a catchment. Baseball fields, dog parks, you name it, are scattered across the bottom of this catchment. But you go down for a closer perspective, we know this is an earthen dam. It was built some 70 years ago, so essentially a lot of dirt holding everything up. A lot of these are privately owned. There's no government regulations on maintaining them. There's tremendous concern because this dam right now is filled to capacity. So we talked about 130 billion gallons of water. Guess what? It's filled with about 130 billion gallons of water. And if you work your way towards the northern fringe of this wall right here, this is it. You notice all these neighborhoods back behind it. These neighborhoods all flooding at this point. The northern fringe, it is about 108 feet high. The water within this right here is now about 108.04 or so inches. So getting directly over this by about a half an inch. So the water is spilling over, getting down into the Buffalo Bayou. And of course, the dam is not failing. The concern is that it is going to begin to really take on tremendous amount of stress from all the water. So the officials, they're doing their best to remove all the stress, reduce water, take water out of it. But at the same time, water is spilling, taking over some of these communities like Lakes on Eldridge, on the southern periphery of this. So when you take a look at exactly what we're dealing with this region, the Buffalo Bayou is responsible for taking on about 500 square miles of land, the water that comes in this land. So there's Houston. There's multiple points here across the Buffalo Bayou. You look at these gauges, all of those water, all that water from the reservoir is coming downstream, putting us in record territory. And unfortunately, by nature of the volume of water, how it moves downstream, Jim, it is going to take at least a couple of weeks just to get out of the major flood stage, potentially into the moderate flood stage. This is even if the sun comes out in the next couple of days, which we hope it will. But again, this is just the water doing its thing, and it's that slow motion disaster in play right now.
All right, Pedram, thanks for that update. We appreciate it. I've got Congressman Randy Weber on the line. He represents the 14th District, which is south and east of Houston and has been a very hard-hit area. Congressman, we were just talking about this area in Columbia Lakes. The levee there has been breached. What more can you tell us?
Well, Jim, our emergency response team had gone out 2 days ago asking everybody to leave that area because we knew the floodwaters coming at us were going to be horrific. And, of course, most people did evacuate. There were some who wanted to ride it out to the end. Now the Brazoria County Sheriff's Department, our great County Judge Matt Sebesta, and others are going down there, first responders, and making absolutely sure that people know what's happening. They're getting out. So they're very, very proactive at this point.
And why is it that you think some folks have decided to hold on? Just a few moments ago, we were talking to one of our reporters who said that there are some undocumented people who are worried about being picked up because of their immigration status if they seek relief. I'm being told by DHS that's not going to happen. I suppose there's a variety of reasons why people don't want to leave their homes at this point.
Well, absolutely. They want to stay. You know, Texans are resilient. We're used to hurricanes and some flooding down here. Now, this has been called the worst flooding event in American history now. But people want to stay close to home. They think they can ride it out. Texans are very, very resilient, but I don't think they anticipated the absolute magnitude of the rainfall. Harvey has stopped Tropical Storm Allison in Texas for the most amount of rain dropped. I think the latest count now is 49 inches. So I don't think people anticipated that.
And Congressman, we have to ask you this. 4 years ago, you were opposed to federal funding for relief for victims of Superstorm Sandy. Why did you oppose that at that time? And do you think it's hypocritical, as some are saying now, for you to be seeking federal assistance for your area. Obviously, the people there need it. Nobody's disputing that. But in hindsight, do you regret opposing that funding for Sandy victims?
Jim, I was very clear at the time that there was additional measures thrown into that bill. The Smithsonian Institute, there was a couple of parks. There was $1 million for some upgrades, different parks and whatnot. So there was actually what I would call pork attached to that bill, which I did not believe belonged on that bill. I had that discussion with leadership at the time. I said, they told them, you take that off that bill, I'm good to go.
And what we understand, Congressman, from looking into this morning is that there really wasn't very much pork at all in that bill. There have been a couple of fact-check reports to come out just today saying there wasn't really much of any pork in that legislation. There was some additional spending on other items, but it was very small with respect to and compared to the vast majority of that funding, which did go to disaster relief. Are you hopeful this time that people don't play politics with this sort of thing?
Absolutely. Look, I've been a proponent from day one, if you looked at my voting record, on omnibuses and continuing resolutions, with one exception, because it lifted the oil embargo of the ban that we had in place in 73. I voted against all of those because I think bills should be standalone. Appropriations should be passed on their merit and not simply joined with something else to make it palatable.
Right. But in a perfect world, I mean, obviously things are going to be thrown into bills that you don't like. In hindsight, though, do you think you should have voted for that Sandy legislation? And do you maybe have some convincing to do with some of your colleagues? Or you're going to have to look some of your colleagues in the face from up in the Northeast and say, look, I know I voted against this back then, but I need your help now?
Well, we'll have that discussion. I think most of them are understanding that when you've got someone who votes against something for a particular reason, you may not have to agree with the reason, but I'm pretty easy to get along with. I have good relationships. Joe Kennedy called me yesterday. We had a lot of discussions with our friends across the aisle, and even with the Republicans that we may have a difference with. You know, when you've got a good reason, you explain it, and I think you're nice about it. Look, let's work on this together. As you know, Peter King's already tweeted out he intends to vote for the bill. And so I think you're going to see us come together. As long as someone has a good reason, a logical reason in my estimation, they're not belligerent or condescending about it, or gloating about it, I think we all get together and we work on it. So I think you're going to see us come together on it.
All right, Congressman Randy Weber, we hope that's the case and that people put politics aside to help the people in your part of the country there, and all the best to your efforts and those residents down there that you're looking after at this point. Congressman Weber, we appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And our special coverage of the flooding and the aftermath of Harvey continues right after a quick break. Let's get back to Houston now, where rescue crews are working around the clock to help people whose homes are now underwater. Our Brian Todd has been going out with some of those crews. We attempted to talk to him at the top of the hour. We've reestablished that connection. He joins us now from Houston. Brian, what can you tell us?
Well, Jim, we've been riding along with these Customs and Border Protection helicopter units from the Air and Marine Operations Unit of the Customs and Border Protection Division. Here's one right behind me that has just stopped briefly for refueling. These missions, Jim, have been rapid fire. In the Black Hawk that we rode in earlier, we rescued 28 people just in the span of an hour in 3 different missions. So they are really just hustling to these flood-ravaged neighborhoods. We can show you some of the video that we shot from the air. The flooding really just seems to go on forever, and we saw some of the worst flooded areas in the entire region. Water was past the windows in many houses, up to the roof on many other houses. We rescued several elderly people in one mission. I talked to an 80-year-old woman named Laura Cox about her rescue. Take a listen.
I've lost everything. I've lost both cars and everything in my house. We've got waist-high water in my house.
What happened when these guys came?
Well, they rescued me in a boat first, and then they brought me by helicopter here. So the boat took us to the community center, and that was going to flood. So then they evacuated us by helicopter. So
what would you have done if these guys hadn't shown up?
Oh, well, we would have had to go to the attic, and I don't know what would have happened. They're lifesavers.
And the agents tell us they've rescued hundreds of people just over the past couple of days. But Jim, these conditions for these chopper pilots are really, really difficult. They've told us that visibility is really horrible. Most of the time, you can only see maybe a quarter mile in each direction. The driving rain is a problem for them. Also, Texas is known for a lot of radio and TV towers. And again, with that low-hanging cloud cover and the visibility being so difficult, you don't see those towers until you're almost right up on them. So they've got to keep a really close eye in all directions. That's part of the danger that they're facing, but they are still flying out. There's a Coast Guard chopper about to take off behind me, but they're still flying out just rapid fire, one after the other. Jim?
Very dangerous conditions, but very brave work. Brian Todd, and what a remarkable story with that lady you just spoke to a few moments ago. If that's your mom or grandma, please give her a call. She looks great after that rescue there. Thank you so much. Fleeing the floodwaters for temporary shelter. When we come back, a look at the Herculean efforts, I should say, underway to house and care for thousands of Houston's homeless when we come back. All right, let's get back now to the worsening humanitarian crisis in Texas. The massive flooding around Houston has forced tens of thousands of people out of their homes. Many of them are now living in shelters, and they are very crowded shelters. The Red Cross alone says they have 17,000 people from across the area in shelters right now. The mayor of Houston says he's seeking federal aid so more shelters can be opened up. And 240 miles north of that area in Dallas, the city has opened their doors to help the people who are affected by the floods. Rosa Flores is at a shelter in Houston right now. Rosa, what are some of the biggest challenges for the people there? And I see you're standing with some folks there right now, including a little girl who I guess has to deal with all of this as well. What can you tell us?
Let me introduce you to Danielle here. Danielle, you just arrived. Share with us how you were rescued.
Some guys had called our phone and asked us where we were because we was waiting for the police for like 36 hours and they never came. And we was waiting at the home. We did the white flags and everything and nobody came. But then somebody had called the phone after we decided to leave the house and we had walked to the gas station with the kids. And then they had called and came and picked us up. But we had been there like 5 days with no food and no lights and nobody came. Like nobody came.
Now you're with your children. We've heard of stories of mothers trying to save their children from the rushing waters. Can you tell us how that was?
Through 4 feet of water to go get them food on the first day. Yeah, that's a lot of shit. But y'all sitting here, y'all trying to interview people during their worst times. Like, that's not the smartest thing to do. Like, people are really breaking down and y'all sitting here with cameras and microphones trying to ask us what the fuck is wrong with us.
So I'm so
and
sorry,
you really trying to understand it with the microphone still in my face, with me shivering cold, with my kids wet, and you still putting the microphone in my face.
Rosa Flores, it sounds like you've got a very upset family there. We're going to take a break from that, and we'll get back to you later on. Rosa Flores in Houston for us. Thank you. Along the Texas-Louisiana border, scenes like this as hundreds of residents are rescued from their flooded-out homes and brought to safety. A live report when we come back. I want to go back to Rosa Flores, who was at that shelter in Houston. Rosa, that was just that situation you were taking us to a few moments ago where that woman and her daughter were talking to you. And the woman there, really, you could tell she was at the breaking point. I think it symbolizes what we see so many times from people who are hard hit. I was in Katrina 12 years ago, and you see people at their breaking points, and we just saw that a few moments ago. Tell us about it.
You know, we've seen a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of shock here. And that's exactly what that woman is going through. It's a very painful time. I mean, I've talked to other people here who have described being on a boat, getting rescued, but seeing other people hanging onto branches, trying to swim and take care of their children, and seeing people perish in the waters, and people screaming, asking for help, and because their boat is full, they can't help them. So there's a lot of trauma, and I know that we talk about this whenever we cover disasters, is, you know, saving lives involves a lot of trauma, first of all, for first responders. The people that are getting saved experience a lot of trauma as well. And so, you know, that's exactly what that woman is going through. And as she mentioned, She went through all of that with her children. So just imagine, any parent can relate to that. You know, imagine having to jump on a boat with your children, not knowing if you're gonna make it alive. So yeah, I mean it's really, really tough for all of these people, and they're going through a lot of trauma, and like you mentioned, a lot of them at their breaking point.
Absolutely, Rosa Flores with a very human moment there in Houston. And if you see her again, if you see that nice lady again, please give her our best and tell her that we're thinking about her. And thanks for sharing that with us. We appreciate it, Rosa Flores in Houston. Thank you. Communities throughout southeastern Texas are dealing with the effects of Tropical Storm Harvey. Wind damage and heavy flooding have forced people out of their homes from LaGrange to Beaumont. Our Drew Griffin is in Beaumont, Texas right now with our first look at that city. And Drew, it seems, no matter how far you're going outside of Houston into the Houston metropolitan area, other even nearby cities, you are seeing a lot of devastation.
Yeah, and this is real life, Jim. This is happening right now. A family that has just been brought in. This is 60 miles east of Houston, and this is a family that has just come in. They've obviously got a small child getting off of this rescue boat, and this has been going on here for 2 days now. Just boats going into these neighborhoods, which are getting higher and higher as the storm keeps progressing. And you see behind me just a flotilla of volunteer boaters who are trying to penetrate some of these areas. And the biggest problem they're having, Jim, is that not everywhere is water. So they will run down trying to get to a neighborhood, and then suddenly their boats will be dry and they can't hopscotch across. So it's been a series of trying to get these boats in the right spot at the right time. No shortage of volunteer boaters here. The problem is navigating in a county that is becoming really a sea of islands. There's no information, Jim, as to actually how many rescues are going on, because so many of them are just volunteers, neighbors helping neighbors. Quite frankly, we've seen people coming in from other states with their boats just trying to help. Jim?
And Drew, we just have a little bit of time left, but it almost looks like behind you, that is another road that is becoming a river, more boats than cars almost. And is there anything you can tell us about that family that was coming in, or is it just that this is one of many families we're seeing being rescued at this moment?
You know, we've been watching them all morning long. These are basically people who thought yesterday they could hunker down in place, and today they called back and wanted to get out. The sheriff has said that that's been the biggest problem. They tried to get all these people out yesterday, but the water didn't rise that much. Now the water continues to rise, and now the people realize they've got to get out. Several of them have gone back trying to get their pets. So you have all kinds of situations going on where you need to have rescues. And the boaters are here, but as I said, Jim, it's a hopscotch of islands that these boaters you can't just drive to one part of the county and suddenly navigate your boat all over the place. It doesn't work that way. You have, isolated pockets and then just water after water after water. It's very tough right now.
All right, Drew Griffin, thank you very much. That's it for me. Our coverage of the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey continues with all of our brave teams on the ground. Stay with us.